Jesus said to his disciples, in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from the sky, and the powers in the heaven will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels to gather his elect from the four winds, from the end of the earth till the end of the sky. Learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches become tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, know that he is near and at the gates. Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father By, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. The end times. When is it going to happen? Do you understand just how long people have been predicting the end of the world? It usually comes up right at the beginning of the year, these prophets of doom. Guy that I grew up with, I don't know, they found some guy, held church in a trailer, and he was deaf in one ear and heard God out of the other ear. They all decided that the world was coming to an end. They moved to the Ozark Mountains to some place, and then he wanted to make sure his son would be with him, so he kidnapped his son from his wife who he was divorced from. It's gone on forever. A number of years ago, I was in Plano, Texas, and they had a group of Koreans who had moved to Plano, Texas. And I'm not making this up, because God was coming on cable channel 32. And they were there for the end of the world in Plano, Texas. And as they were interviewing these Koreans, they all had these big, huge 10-gallon Texas hats on, okay? And so they're talking about the end of the world. And he said, is there any significance to the hats? He said, no, we just wanted to fit in with the locals so they wouldn't notice us, okay? I mean, and Y2K, you remember that? The year 2000, when the computers were going to crash and everything was going to go and the world was going to end? We still got people who got 3 and 4 gallons of freeze-dried peanut butter left from that, because they were going to be the ones who were going to survive it when the world ends. I don't have a clue. And you will find out nothing in the next 30 minutes that is going to tell you about the end of the world. I'm in sales, not management, okay? Not my deal. It's no one's deal. And it has to do with this great fear that we're going to die. I mean, what's the news flash here? I had an 86-year-old parishioner I went to see a few days ago, and he has cancer. I said, how you doing? He said, Father, my life is over. I'm going to die. And I didn't want to be mean, but I said, baby, you're 86 years old. Are you looking for a refund? You've had 86 years. And you act like he's mad at you because you're getting ready to die. How long were you planning on? I mean, I'm not being ugly here. But at the age of 86, What did you expect? I had a couple, I did their 63rd wedding anniversary. It was wonderful. They were both healthy, full of life, both had their good senses, their good health. Then they went on a cruise for 2 weeks and everything. About 3 months later, he didn't wake up. He died in his sleep. His wife never set foot in church, refused to be buried in church, and was mad at God for taking her husband. Oh, well. You know, I share with the kids. You know, you're going to die. Every last one of us are. Some of you not going to make it out of high school. Why would you tell kids that? Well, you've never heard of a high school kid dying tragically? It happens all the time. You know, and anyone who tells you you're not dying, anyone who tells you you're getting out of here alive, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So don't be afraid of it. It's called life. And all of us are called one day, at the end of this life, to go home. Hopefully to God. So to act like it's a big surprise that I'm 86 years old and I'm dying, I would think in 86 years you would have realized that. I'm not being ugly. I'm just saying dying's part of life. And birth is part of life. That's how we replenish our people. It's a cycle of life. And so all this about what's going to happen at the end times. Okay, that's what he says is going to happen. I buy it. But I'm not looking out every night to see whether or not the stars are falling. I'm not looking to see whether or not I can see the angels being dispersed to the 4 directions. Because I don't know if I'm going to be alive by the time you get to see this program. No, I'm not sick. I know of. Although I do have a funeral tomorrow. And last Saturday she was fine. She had an aneurysm. Died within a week. Absolutely fine, teaching school, doing great. That's not a news flash either. It happens. And so you would think that as we go through life and as we live life, a little older we get, maybe we could get a little philosophical about it. Maybe we could kind of make peace with that idea that one day it's going to happen. I pray God. Do I want to live to be 100 years old? No. Do I want to have someone else take care of my daily bodily needs? No. Not my call. I have no idea what God has in store for me. I swear I'm going to be the guy in the nursing home who's walking down and can't figure out why everyone is smiling at me, but my fly is always down, okay? I mean, I'm going to be that guy, okay? But the reality is that, we're going to die. And not everybody lives long enough to die. I love what Billy Graham says. Billy Graham says, I don't know why people complain about getting old. It's a privilege that God grants to very few. And I think he's right. But the question is not whether or not I live to be 60, 80, 90, or 25. The question is that I understand that it can come any day, any time. And I have no control over that. I absolutely have no control over that. I don't have to be sick. I don't have to be engaged in risky behavior. All I have to be doing is living, and by the mind and the will of God, it can be my last moment. We all know that. We've all seen that. And so the challenge is, and the only thing that I can control is making sure that every day of my life, I live in such a way that if it's my last day, I'm at peace with God. Church has some wonderful, wonderful options for that. One is, is we have the sacrament of reconciliation. Too few people, after the Second Vatican Council, you still have to go to confession? I don't even know what a sin is anymore. We used to think all this was a sin, and now they told us none of it's a sin anymore. And besides, what happened to all those people who ate meat on Friday? It's legal. All these things. Sin has not changed. Some church laws have changed. Sin has not changed. But let me give you a recommendation. Never let more than 2 months go by that you don't go to confession. At least every 2 months. Make a good act of contrition every night before you go to bed. But the other thing is get you a good examination of conscience. Go online. Just Google examination of conscience. 8 or 10 of them will come up. Some of them are really, really good. Get that examination of conscience and keep it by your bedstand. Make it part of your night prayers. Review your day. Look at the things that I've done or the things that I haven't done that perhaps I should have. And at the end of every day, make sure that you make a good act of contrition. That I don't end a day without telling God, thank you for the gifts that you've given me, and I'm sorry for the ways in which I have offended you. If you find yourself in the state of mortal sin, then by all means, find a church. There are always churches around that have daily confessions. Maybe your parish doesn't. But if you live in anywhere of a suburban or metropolitan area, there'll be one close by that has confession. Never, never go to sleep with mortal sin on your soul if you can avoid that. If you can find a place for confession. And if it's just impossible to go to confession, then truly, truly, truly say a good act of contrition, asking God's forgiveness and mercy for whatever that might have been. Start to do that. Start to do just that sort of thing in terms of your daily life and your daily practice of your faith. And if you do that, death's not that scary. Death is just not that scary. The other thing is, and it's something people have forgotten, and the other thing is to make sure that when you have someone who's chronically or terminally ill, please make sure you call for the sacrament of the sick. The sacrament of the sick, we used to call it extreme unction. And you thought, well, if they got extreme unction, they got another 5 minutes to live. Our understanding is the sacraments are for the living. It'll bring healing, it'll bring strength, it'll bring peace. If someone is chronically or terminally ill, call your parish priest and say, so-and-so is sick. Can someone please come by, hear their confession, and give them the sacrament of the sick? Don't wait till 3 o'clock in the morning and you think, well, they ought to be gone in the next half hour, let's call the priest. That doesn't always work. And, when you're able to anoint someone and give them the last sacraments, someone receives the last sacrament and dies, we just gave them an easy pass to heaven. They're facing God with all their sins forgiven because the sacrament brings absolution. We can talk more about getting ready. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bye from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. Amen, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Welcome back to Closer Walk. I'm Father By, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. That reality of death and that preparation of death. One of the things that I think frightens me about the direction that I see society going today is when you take God out of the equation, when you take God out of the public square, then you're left only with the here and now. You're left only with the known. Case in point, I know some college kids. They're great kids. They go to church. They're involved in their evangelization team. They go out and they give retreats to high school kids, and they're really sympathetic, and they're really great kids. They do adoration. They go to confession, and they're so excited now that gay people can be married. And they think Roe v. Wade is correct, that everyone ought to have a choice. And I'm saying, put the two together. And they don't understand the difference between legality and morality. They think in this land of the free, they think that people ought to have these choices, and the choices ought to be accepted, and God's law should not interfere with that. Now, they would say for themselves, it would be wrong. They would say for themselves to marry a person of the same sex, for themselves to have an abortion, it would be wrong. But they think it's right that everyone has that opportunity. And part of it tells me that they don't have their own children. They're not at that point of worrying about the next generation. They're not at that point of understanding that we all have a very limited amount of time. They're not at that point of understanding the finality of life, because right now the potential of life is all that they live with and all that they have. And so there's a real disconnect. And there's a real disconnect in the lives of what I consider many of our so-called Catholic leaders. You know, the ones who make sure everyone sees them with their Ash Wednesday ashes. But other than that, nothing that they legislate or promote, represents their Catholic values. They separate their faith life from their public life. Those are two completely different things. And I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. To me, that's just as hypocritical as saying, well, I'm a happily married man, and when I'm at home and when I'm with my family, it's okay. But when I'm on a business trip, I can be something else. I can be just a guy looking to party in an unknown city. You don't do that. You don't say, well, yeah, I'm Catholic when I'm in church, but I'm not Catholic when I'm in public. I believe in God's law inside of church. I don't believe in God's law inside of our country. And I see a lot of that in our young people. And the thing is I don't blame them for that. I think it's incorrect. But I had someone and my family go to an all-girls Catholic high school. And when I asked her about the whole questions, what they dealt with human sexuality, whether it was same-sex relationships, abortion, birth control, all this sort of thing, she said in our junior year, that was a big issue. And they assigned half the class pro and the other half of the class con. And then they had to debate it. And it got really emotional. And the teacher said, see how emotional this is? So it's important that everyone decide for yourself what you really believe in. Excuse me? I'm paying $12,000 for a Catholic education so that a bunch of other young 17-year-olds can decide what's right and wrong based on emotion? That confusion that exists. It exists in society, and we've allowed that confusion to exist because you've got to be over the age of 42 to have ever lived in a country where you didn't think abortion was a God-given protected right by our Constitution. They didn't grow up in the days where, divorce was not prevalent. They didn't grow up in a day when there wasn't abortion to speak of, let alone 1.8 million a year. So there's a lot of confusion. And I think in that confusion, then we have confusion about what life really means. And I think in that sense, we get very scared of death. One of the things that when I was hospital chaplain, unless you were 12 years old, you used to not be able to go into the hospital. And so you had to be 12 years old to experience death. In the old days, Grandma and Grandpa died in the back room. We had the wake in the front parlor. They saw all this. It was just kind of part of life. It was a little bit scary. It was a little bit unsettling. It was weird. They're cold. That was all weird. But it was life. And now we've sanitized it and we've legalized it and we've confused people. And, the other thing is people dealing with death by medication. Oh, they're so upset their child died. Of course you're upset. It's your child, it's your heart, it's your life. Don't keep them drugged up for a week until the funeral's over. But what if they break down? Let them break down. That's life. Let them get it out of them. Live life. Don't be afraid of it. It's part of the life, part of the world in which we live. And I don't think we acknowledge that. I don't think we accept that. And so therefore, this whole cultic, doomsday cult prophecy sort of thing, that's becoming more and more prevalent. People trying to figure out when the end of the world is. Doesn't matter. If you're ready, you're ready. If you're not, you're not. That doesn't matter if it happens 20 years from now or 20 minutes from now. And that's the great challenge. That's the great challenge. And for us on a daily basis to make preparations, to be ready, to look at our lives in such a way that if today is our last day, God knows I'm not perfect, but God knows I tried. That's what I want on my tombstone. God knows I tried. Never been perfect, never will be, but I keep plugging along. I keep trying to become a better person, a holier priest, a better whatever. I try. I do good some days. I don't do good some days. That's life. But part of that is understanding where the end game is. Just a month or so ago, Yogi Berra died. And there were all the yogiisms that were out, and there were supposedly statements that Yogi Berra said. And there was one that I loved, and it was, And it was something like, better know where you're going, because if you don't, you probably won't get there. It was something, silly like that. But at the same time, I think that's a great statement about our faith. You better know where you're going, because chances are you won't get there. You better know what the end game is. Chances are you won't reach it. You better know what our goal in life is, and you won't achieve it. And our goal in life is to one day see the face of God and enjoy his presence for all eternity. And if we do that in 5 years, or if we do that in 95 years, we have no way of knowing. My very first time in experiencing death was second grade. In second grade, with the old black and white TVs, it was summer. We got to sleep a little bit later. I came in, we were having breakfast, and here's the school picture of a little girl in my class who was on television. Oh, look, Susie Howell's on television. And then they started to tell the story that she was killed on her way to Florida on vacation. And there's my little classmate. And my mom, she and I have talked about it. Some of the parents said, oh, no, we got to keep the kids away. Mom said, no. She brought us to the funeral home in second grade, and I saw my little classmate. Oh, was I traumatized? Yeah, it was really weird. But in an early age, I knew that death was part of life, and praying that Susie was in heaven was also part of life. And it doesn't matter what age, what stage we come to that reality, but at some point in our life, we have to know that this is temporary. We're just passing through. Life is a test. Life is only a test. If we'd been given a real life, we'd have been given instructions on where to go and what to do. Our instructions are to one day see the face of God. And our goal is to learn how to live each day, longing for and yearning for the face of God. And when we live our lives that way, we're not scared, because we're ready. We're not perfect, but God knows I tried. And I'll take my chances, knowing that God knows I tried. Thanks for being with us. May each day bring you closer in your walk with the Lord. God bless you.
Thank you for watching. For copies of today's program, please log on to closerwalkministries.com.